Our guest now is Lee Alcorn, Senior Vice President, CFO Solutions. Thanks so much for being here, Lee.
Thanks, Sam. Glad to be here.
Lee, we're talking about the small business assistance, and the key provision of that is the Paycheck Protection Program, which really started out with $349 billion in loans, but almost immediately there was the call for more money because there's such need. So the question is, there's obviously a limited pool of funds. Who should apply for these loans? So if you're an advisor and you're doing okay financially, should you apply for these loans?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the tenets of the Paycheck Protection Program were really to fund small businesses to keep people employed and keep their business operating. So the parameters they kind of put in place are a broad swath across, and why you see these this finite resources being eaten up fairly quickly. So the tenets of the PPP are: is your business less than 500 employees? Were you in operation prior to February 15th? Will your loan be used for ongoing operations, with 75% of the loan going to payroll? And if you're answering those questions yes, then you're eligible. So that's a lot of business owners that are eligible for these. And so depending on your financial situation, you may not need to apply. We've worked with advisors through the past couple of weeks and reviewed their financial situation, their cash reserves, their projected income, and what that looks like over the next few months. And some have said, hey, given that this is a finite resource, I don't think that I need to apply for these loans, because there may be business owners out there that do need to apply for these loans. And so it is a decision that you can make based off of your current financial situation and what you feel is right for your business at this time. I will say that those business owners that have chosen not to apply at this time are carefully watching the additional money that may be coming out and the macroeconomic environment to see, maybe in the next couple of weeks they deem that it is necessary. So it really is specific to your financial situation and what you think you should do at this point in time.
Is there any way to know just how many people will apply for these loans, and how many are you already helping?
Yeah, so great question. So I think as of yesterday, there were $220 billion of the overall $349 billion approved through the SBA, with the expectation for those to be dispersed in the days and weeks to come. There is indication of another $250 billion, but that's because the requirements that I listed earlier, that applies to a lot of business owners in our country that need this assistance. So I imagine that the $349 billion will be earmarked throughout the end of this week, if not at the beginning of next week, and why they're pushing for the additional $250 billion of legislation to give to the PPP. Our team, the CFO Solutions team, has partnered with about 50% of our advisors to facilitate about $6.5 million of PPP funding, with another $4 million in the pipeline. So we expect to have applied for about $10 million with our advisor base by the end of the week this week.
All right, so let's get down to the nitty gritty and really help our advisors fill out that application. So prior to filling out the application, you really need to make sure you have all your ducks in a row. Make sure you have the right documents ready. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have worked with our advisors across a broad swath of lenders, and every lender varies depending on what it is. We are seeing everyone kind of navigate to a normal as people are getting their hands under this and their arms around this, But what we've seen for the documentation that you need to have is, is your payroll processing records, whether that's ADB, Paychecks, QuickBooks, whatever that may be, payroll tax filings, IRS forms such as your 940, 941, W-3, your 2019 tax returns, state and local taxes, any health insurance premiums from the prior year that you have paid for, and retirement plan contributions, and any financial statements to support that. A simple rule to remember is that if you plan to include it in the calculation, you should have the documentation to kind of back that up. So that your calculation is supported by the documentation that you have. Another key thing that some of the lenders are asking for are corporate governance documents. So if that's your articles of incorporation or your partnership agreements, any operating agreement or corporate bylaws are sometimes required as well.
So when you're filling out the application, what do advisors need to make sure you're doing or they're doing as they're filling that out? Anything that you've learned as you've been helping with other advisors?
Yeah, so the good thing is the application is fairly easy, and especially for a government form. You're not inundated with a lot of legalese or tricky questions or things that you need to do. But it is a kind of stressful situation that everyone is in filling out these applications. So here's some things that we've kind of learned along the process in doing so. And you'll fill out you'll calculate your payroll cost and begin filling out the application. You need to make sure that your salaries, wages, commissions, or tips, they're capped at $100,000 per employee, are included. And then you want to include any employee benefits that you make, vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, any type of retirement benefits, state and local taxes assessed on the compensation overall. And then important for sole proprietors or independent contractors, your wages, commissions, income, and net earnings from self-employment capped at $100,000 for each employee is important as well. And then you want to calculate and get or collect, all of that supporting documentation so that you can support the calculation. And your calculation for the PPP loan is fairly simple. It's 2.5 times the average monthly payroll. And people are using either their full year 2019 or kind of trailing 12 months, prior 12 months, whatever makes the most sense for the business and the data that they have overall. There are a few areas of the application that we have been focusing our advisors on, and that's really tying the loan amount request, which is in Section C, to Section D, and understanding that if you had previously applied for an economic injury disaster loan, you want to make sure that you net out the loan advance of that loan and include that into the overall calculation. So you want to make sure that any type of EIDL loan that you have taken is net of the advance you received, and you include that with the overall PPP loan request so that you can roll those funds in together. Sections F and G are all pretty self-explanatory, but always good to confirm. So Section F, the applicant has to clearly certify that they are eligible for the PPP. Meaning that the applicant is the party that is verifying they're eligible for the funds, not the lender. So just making sure that you verify that. And then also Section G, the applicant has to confirm that they are franchise listed in the SBA franchise directory, not the lender. So those are two things, pretty self-explanatory, but always good to kind of understand and focus on making sure that you're certifying and verifying that.
Okay, so then you've filled out the application, you've submitted it, you're not quite done yet. There are a couple of things that advisors need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you really want to make sure with your lender, your banker, whether it's a fintech company or an online lender or a local level lender, is their portal ready for the PPP application? That we have seen a lot more come online over the past kind of week or so, whereas at first there was a little bit of delay in everybody getting up and running. So hopefully everybody's portal is ready, and making sure that they are submitting the applications through their portal or whatever means necessary. And then you want to double check your documents, your calculations, and when in doubt, ask. Ask your trusted business partner, ask your lender, ask whatever consultants you have, any CPAs. And making sure that you're not inflating or overstating anything. Errors just lead to delays. So you want to make sure that you have everything pretty buttoned up ahead of time. And then you want to ask your lender for the turnaround time. We want to be sure that your expectations are set properly, and there's a large volume request. I mean, as we've said, $220 billion have already been earmarked for this, and that's a lot of money that lenders are processing and the SBA is processing at the end of the day. And you'll want to be just mindful of the forgiveness reduction restrictions and prepare to rehire or reinstate wages for anybody that you may have had to lay off or put on furlough through this time.
Well, let's talk about forgiveness of the loans, because there's some question about, okay, what is actually forgiven? This is important because you need to make sure your calculations are correct and they accurately reflect your payroll and who you have on that payroll.
Yeah, absolutely. So to be eligible for forgiveness, no more than 25% of the overall loan proceeds may be used towards non-payroll costs. So spoken in the inverse, meaning 75% have to go towards ongoing payroll costs. And the forgivable portion of your loan is really your payroll costs, your occupancy costs, which include your eligible mortgage interest, lease obligations, et cetera, plus your utility costs. And that's kind of the formula you want to use for the forgiveness. You have to have some documentation for your future forgiveness, and that'll be your proof of payroll and your proof of occupancy costs. So just as you provided all that supporting documentation to get the loan amount, you'll have to have supporting documentation for the forgiveness amount. And that's really just as simple as your payroll records, your occupancy costs, and your utility costs overall. A key thing to remember is the amount of forgiveness of the PPP loans depends on the borrower's payroll cost over an 8-week period. And a lot of people are like, well, when does that 8-week period start? And it really starts once you receive the funds from the lender, So you'll start that calculation or those payroll records from the day you receive those proceeds over the next 8-week time period.
All right, and let's talk about the U4, because there were some questions that we received from advisors saying, do the loans need to be disclosed? Can you confirm that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've received a lot of questions around this, and we had our own interpretation of the regulatory guidance, but we did receive confirmation from FINRA late last week that these will not be disclosable on the U4, so you don't have to worry about that.
All right, and let's reiterate the deadline for submitting your application. We're saying June, but it could be extended.
Yeah, so I mean, as of right now, with the legislation on the books, we need to reiterate that small business owners have until June 30th to apply for these loans. However, with the expectation that this additional 250 billion will be approved, I imagine that that deadline will be extended. However, we don't have anything concrete yet. We'll just have to monitor the ongoing legislation.
You and your team have been working so hard with all of our advisors. What are some of the key things that you're learning from them that maybe you can share with others?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing is it takes time. This is a large volume that we are processing through our system, and it's kind of overwhelming. You know, we've never done anything like this in our country before. I mean, it's for all the right reasons, but it's not one of those simple, just, you know, like you go through the drive-through at your bank and you get your loan and you're done. You know, it does take some time. We have noticed that things are just improving drastically day over day as lenders and the SBA and everyone is getting their arms around this. So that's really a good news. Another thing to remember is that each eligible company can only apply for one PPP loan. This means that if you apply for a PPP loan, you should consider getting the maximum amount that you can versus trying to do it in tranches or things like that. You know, so even if you only think, well, I only need half the loan, go ahead, take the full amount, and then just repay the amount that you didn't need back. That you're only eligible for this loan once. And overall, this has been a very fluid learn as you go process for everyone, including myself, my team, all small business owners, the lenders, but it is improving each day. So just having some patience is kind of key in this environment.
Lee, thanks so much for your time and your insight. We should reiterate that a lot of the information Lee just talked about is on our new CARES Act website, so be sure to check that out. If you have questions, email us at caresact@lpl.com.